go in and I say, Dad, I've done it. I've got into university. And he was like, oh, brilliant. That's really good. You could see that was a fantastic thing to happen, and he was going, oh, brilliant. Where are you going? I said, I'm going to Swansea. His face kind of changed a little bit, kind of all that kind of joy and stuff kind of evaporated a bit and kind of went a bit more seriously. And he just said, the piss pot of Wales. Can't really get ahead of ourselves. We shouldn't try and get ahead of ourselves, really. Remember where you're from. Don't be seduced by this big city you're going to. And friends and family do that, don't they? If you've got good friends and family around you, they keep your feet on the ground. And the thing that I've done over time is been privileged to work in this thing we call innovation. All of the feeds you have coming into you are your time, and you've got to understand how much time you're going to use. Measure how much time you're spending on it, then you can change something, right? If you can measure it, you can change it. I always have to have that sort of goal that I'm walking towards. And so now I've circumnavigated the whole country. I'm the kind of guy that is ritual, routine, rhythm.
A massive thank you to our sponsor NTS, Nuclear Transport Solutions, who are the leading global provider of safe, secure and reliable nuclear transport solutions. We are very grateful for NTS sponsoring this episode of Tackling It Together. And welcome back to the Little Blackbird Tackling It Together podcast. And today is an exciting day because we are I'm going to be having a conversation with the legend, the Welsh legend, Bryan Griffiths.
I'm good, yeah, excited.
So, Bryan, before we get into the conversation, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of give us a bit of an insight into the perspectives that we're going to explore in the conversation.
Sure, yeah. I think when I reflect on all of my kind of work in life, it's been centered around innovation. I've always had that sort of hat on right from the get-go, really. So coming out of university, I worked in a medical device company for many years and spent a lot of time there learning how to make things. I was kind of at the bench making new products, so that was pretty good. Kind of, when you are charged with making the new stuff, it's pretty exciting. Thereafter, I went across to Manchester and I worked in the NHS for a number of years. Worked in the NHS for about 10 years, and that was pretty different. It's different, culturally different, completely kind of different sort of environment. And thereafter, I've kind of been involved in a multiple set of sort of business support roles at my own business that's helped other businesses in the medical field and healthcare field understand and navigate the healthcare system, because it's a complex thing. What we're trying to do is generally a very complicated thing. So yeah, I feel, and now I work part-time, and I work in Wales for a company called Big Innovation, and they run a programme of Innovate UK support across Wales. So I'm helping Welsh businesses, some startups, some established businesses, all in the area of innovation. So it's kind of, it's had that word running through it for many years, and I'm very grateful and feel a bit blessed to have been doing that. Yeah,
that's a perfect job for you. So, Bryan, we're going to have a great conversation.
Yeah,
conversation like we did back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I want to ask you a question. Go with this.
Okay.
Who do you think would win in a altercation fight between a Welsh dragon and a phoenix? And justify your answer.
Well, that's a very good question. You could say they're both mythical beasts, so it's hard to get this wrong, really. But I'm always going to kind of fall down on the side of a Welsh dragon, really, aren't I? Really, I couldn't go against it, even if logic were to point me in the other direction. I think I'd have to kind of say the Welsh dragon. And my reasoning, I just go with my heart.
Do you know how hard it was to find a similar mythical creature to a Welsh dragon? It took me about 12 minutes at least. Bryan, I'm really happy to have you on the podcast. I loved our conversations back in the past. When I was working in the office with you, well, how many years did we say ago it was? We didn't actually quantify.
6 plus, maybe 7.
Well over that. I don't even think my little girl was born.
Yeah. No.
She hadn't, so she's 7 now, so it was well before that. But we had some really good conversations,
we did.
Deep conversations.
We did.
You were a big fan of innovation, you were a big fan of technology, Twitter back in the day, you were all over that. So I think we're going to have a really good conversation, and I want to tap into lots of different things that you do, and I know that the innovation is really key to you in terms of your life and your business and work. But I think there's lots of stories that you'll have from your background and your role models in lives that will really resonate with people. So it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Where should we start? Take us back to where life started for you, to the valleys, I believe.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So, I was kind of brought up and born in the South Wales Valleys, Merthyr Tydfil. And I grew up in a mining town. I grew up in a South Wales mining town, and it's as it sounds, really, a really busy kind of industrial landscape, if you can imagine, set in a lush green valley, but you are right next to a working pit, So if we want to talk about role models, I guess, I was surrounded by miners and surrounded by the people who kind of lived in those communities. Mining was the predominant employer, the employment option at the time. So there were people up and down the kind of street I lived on. I was thinking about that, the way they really worked hard, worked a shift, and then kind of came home. One of the things I've been thinking about is how my environment was quite idyllic, really, in a way. Right next to this big industrial beast of a pit, but we had rows of houses that would be the first when the pit was sunk, and they had long gardens reaching out on one side to the River Taff. Can you imagine how Welsh is this? And then on the other side to the actual mine itself. So we were kind of hemmed in. But those gardens were so well tended. Yeah. And that made me think, actually, these people are kind of going in, putting a shift in, coming back, and having the dedication still to kind of make their environment as pleasant as possible and as productive as possible. Half it was given over to vegetables and that sort of stuff, and half it was given over to kind of flowers I think there were characters in up and down that street that would keep immaculate kind of gardens, and that kind of said something to me. I think as I think back now, that kind of says a lot, I think. Yeah.
And also those adults would have worked hard through the week, looked after the house, and then probably played rugby on the Saturday. And
absolutely, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think football and rugby were kind of the mainstays back then. That was really well supported, great camaraderie. You have to have good camaraderie in coal mining, right? Because safety is such a big issue. Any business or any industry that has the kind of big, heavy industry that has that, you'll always find fantastic safety kind of ethos. And with that comes, good camaraderie because everyone's got each other's back, right? So, I kind of saw that. I grew up there. I was really quite average as well. That's one thing I wanted to say. One thing I did recently was kind of drew out from the attic all my kind of schoolwork, in these kind of really kind of ridiculous exercise books that are covered in flock wallpaper. The stuff. Kind of why you keep this stuff, I don't know, but I kind of.
Whether some of yours would still be on slate, right?
Oh no, thank you. Oh, the wallpaper tells a story. I tell you, it tells you everything. But two things came out to me. I was flicking through them all. Two things. One, how I could make so many teachers that mad with red pen. There's more red pen than blue pen, right, in these things. I was really kind of I looked at myself, why did I kind of annoy them so much by putting so little effort in? And the other thing that strikes me is the word that bounces off all of this book of, all of these kind of exercise books is mediocre. That's how I kind of see myself. That's how I looked at that and thought, my goodness, you didn't. There were the occasional spike where I'd get something right, but by and large, I got by. You know, that was the message. And so and so it was a bit of a revelation, really, to dream beyond the pit and go, you know, I wonder if I can get to university. I wonder if I can, you know, get some GCSEs, get some A-levels, and kind of almost break out, you know, and do that. And I surrounded myself, I guess, with people who had that ambition as well. And I endeavoured to try and do that. Put a bit more effort in, you know, turn the dial up a little bit. And I did it. Amazingly, I did it, you know, not with any flying colours, but I just about kind of got there. And it was a red letter day when I did it. It was wonderful, you know. You know, when you kind of get that. I mean, a little bit kind of a first as well in the family, when all the male members of my family really were minors. So I'm kind of saying, well, I'm going to go off and do this other thing. So that was a bit of a an important day, I think.
So take us a little bit back. You said you lovely and eloquently mentioned there what life was like and the role models and, you know, the people that were working down the pit. But as a young lad, what were you learning in terms of masculinity? What values were you picking up from your role models, and any particular role models in particular that shaped your life? Yeah, well,
one in particular was, you know, when you have an extended family, everyone becomes an uncle and an auntie. I had an uncle along the street called Uncle Ted. Let's call him Uncle Ted. That was his name. And I'd go down to my Uncle Ted and his house every now and again. I'd kind of have a cup of tea and we'd kind of sit and we'd talk about sport. He was great, kind of, you know, he had a great interest in sports. He'd retired by then. He was one with an immaculate garden, you know, and I'd always kind of go down there. He was a wise guy, you know. He's a wise old guy that I really enjoyed. He got a little bit frail to it in later life, and I took over the administering of the garden, oddly. I don't know why he kind of gave me that kind of responsibility. It feels really privileged now, but back then it was a bit of a chore. I was cutting his lawn all of a sudden and helping out a little bit, you know. So the red letter day, you know, and this guy I looked up to, you know, so I'd kind of run to him a little bit when I got some good news or something would happen, perhaps. Red letter day, I go down there and I go in and I say, you know, Dad, I've done it. I've got into university, and he was like, oh, brilliant, that's really good. You know, he could see that was a fantastic thing to happen. You know, and he was going, oh, brilliant. Where are you going? Where are you going? I said, I'm going to Swansea. And his face kind of changed a little bit, kind of all that kind of joy and stuff kind of evaporated a bit and kind of went a bit more seriously. And he just said, the piss pot of Wales. And I was like, did I hear that right? You know, did he just say that? Did he just say that to me? You know, I was elated. Obviously, it was kind of, you know, this is my moment, right? So I doubled down, you know, and said, no, I've got to Swansea University. I'm going to Swansea University. And he doubled down, the piss pot of Wales.
Oh, wow.
And it was a little bit funny. He wasn't, you know, he just kind of, I guess, expressed a reality that I was about to face. You know, it was going to be a bit of a wet town. But what that said to me was that we can't really get ahead of ourselves. We shouldn't try and get ahead of ourselves, really. You know, you remember where you're from.
Yeah.
You know, don't be seduced by this big city you're going to.
The big smoke.
the big city. Remember where you're from, you know, and keep your feet on the ground. And friends and family do that, don't they? You know, if you've got good friends and family around you, they keep your feet on the ground. And so I wasn't kind of that deterred. He was kind of right in a way. It is a bit moist down in Swansea. It's a little bit kind of, it has that reputation. But when I got there, you know, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was Dylan Thomas country.
Yeah.
Dylan Thomas says it's an ugly, lovely town, you know, crawling, sprawling, by the side of a long and splendid curving shore. And you know, I kind of lived that for 5 years, and that defines it really well, you know. It was an achievement, and I look back with it with great pride and great memories. You make all your kind of friends you stay with for life generally down in those years as well. So.
As you were talking there, you know, leaving that small town and going to a city, I kind of resonate with that, leaving Cumbria, Workington and coming to Chester University. How did you find that leap back then, going from that small mining town into the piss pot of Wales?
Well, it was you know, those early days. I think everyone has to go through those early days and that kind of the anxiety of leaving home for the first time, I guess, and all of that comes with it. I was only on maybe a 60-minute, maybe a 90-minute bus ride away. So, frankly, come on, you know, it was doable. Yeah, it was doable. So once I got kind of over those first weeks, yeah, I settled in and it was just fine. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about when we worked together. You were in kind of the medical sector, but innovation, even 8, 9, 10 years ago, whatever it was that we kind of worked together, you were very innovative, and innovation was even pretty big back then, back in the medical sector. Tell me a little about that in your role and why innovation's important.
Well, yeah, I mean, from university years, I kind of bounced on to Cardiff after that, and so you kind of a lot of college years I had kind of under my belt, and my career kind of went into the sort of medical field. Never really kind of came out of that. I kind of worked on healthcare-related products and businesses, for a long time. So I worked in medical devices for about 15 years. Then I worked in the NHS, which is a really kind of gear change again, for about 10 years. And then I've gone on to do a variety of sort of business support things, not only with my own business, but with the business I work with now. I work with an organisation called BIC Innovation, and I'm working part-time with them. And the amazing thing is now I work in Wales with them, and I feel like I've kind of come full circle. My NHS stuff and some of my other stuff has been in the northwest of England, so I've kind of come full circle. I'm back in Wales and providing sort of business support to Welsh companies. And I guess the thing that I've done over time is been privileged to work in this thing that we call innovation, because I recognise the people I'm kind of helping or I've worked with, I've always been doing the new stuff. And the new stuff's like funky, right? It's always the exciting stuff. You've got, in any business, the new thing is the thing that gets everyone's attention. It becomes all-encompassing for some people, and they have an enthusiasm with them, and that can't help but rub off. And I feel really blessed for that. Although I do kind of think sometimes I'm seeing a kind of, not the full picture really, because what I see is not day-to-day production very often. I'm not changing production methods. I'm looking at the new stuff. So I kind of, pinch myself that I'm in this privileged position.
How do you view technology, and how do you decipher what's valuable and what's not?
Well, I've got a feeling about the tools we use, the kind of software we use, and the digital world we inhabit now. That's changed dramatically since we used to have our conversation. That's changed phenomenally. And so I've had to find my own way to kind of cut through the nonsense on that, really, and use the bits that are important to me, and try and find a bit of an analog, world that's still very important. So much of what we do is digital, isn't it? But there is a bit of a toxicity as well with the social media space, and so you don't want to get drawn into too much of that and spend too much of your time kind of scrolling. So you've got to kind of find ways to understand the value in things. All of the feeds you have coming into you are your time, and you've got to understand how much time you're going to use.
Yeah.
So when we think about Facebook and Twitter and X and TikTok and Insta and all of that stuff, you've got to kind of say, well, how much time am I going to give these things? And I think the kind of wisdom, if got any, is to regulate that and kind of go, well, I can't find my friends and family on Facebook anymore. Yeah. I could like 15 years ago. They were the only thing I saw. But now I'm just a sea of adverts, right? And all of those platforms are like that. You've got to kind of know where the value is, how much time. I think it's all about if you measure how much time you're spending on it, then you can change something, right? If you can measure it, you can change it. That's a good adage, I think.
Yeah.
If you're doing that, if you know your online time, just work out what is important to you, what is, how are you going to cut through the noise of it all, I think. That's the important thing.
And do you think, going back to what you were saying there about your role models, they go and do long hours down the pit, they come back, they still have time to sort the garden, do all those bits, do jobs around the house, go to the social club. So they were probably more time precious, they were more time generous. Do you think technology is beneficial, and do you think it outweighs the negatives?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think the thing I do is look forward. I kind of reminisce and I become nostalgic. That's a kind of trait of Wales, right? We have that. But saying that, that's not a desire to live like it's 1950 or 1960 or something. I don't want to do that. You've got to kind of move forward. So I don't want to kind of look at that past with rose-coloured spectacles and think, let's all sort of wind back to that. I think we have to live with what's in front of us and play what's in front of us, right?
Yeah.
For a sporting metaphor.
So you mentioned time there, and it's really interesting when you think back to the role models you mentioned there. They were doing long hours in the pit, come back, sorting the garden out, probably having time to have tea, go to the social club and get up and play rugby on a weekend, whereas time's precious at the moment, and technology obviously has a big part to play in that. So do you think we're poorer in terms of time now due to technology?
Yeah, I think we are, and I don't think we've got the playbook on how to deal with it exactly. There's an example I'd give you about how I because we talk about films a lot, right? We kind of run through
we
films.
Talking about films.
And I can't. I'm not a 2 film a night person anymore. I can't do that. Back to back, one is probably plenty, right? So of a weekend, I might watch one on a Friday and one on a Saturday, right? So I'm absorbing 2. Although the content nowadays is mixed up with whole films and then maybe a bunch of series, right? You might be in the middle of.
Yeah.
Anyway, to get to a point on a Friday night where you sit down after you've completed a week of work and you want to hit play on a film, I found you've got to start planning that at lunchtime on Friday. And otherwise, if you and your partner are in front of a TV, you could find yourself very quickly spiraling out of control in what are we going to watch? There's a whole bunch of stuff there. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. So what I try and do is in the afternoon just grab 30 minutes on Internet Movie Database. You probably other apps are available, just to curate what's there. And go, what's the new stuff? Let's make a short list. I make a short list of 10, then I make it 5. And then when we sit down, I give an option of 2 or 3, and then we're good to go. And that's the way I curate it. And it's tricks like that. Otherwise, you hit 7 o'clock and you want to hit play, and you've got 10 to go through, right? But I've already done that. I've weeded out the low scorers, and I've found a good recommendation somewhere, and I'm good to go. Nobody teaches you that stuff, right? You've got to kind of learn that and kind of get good with that. Otherwise, you'll find time just rolling away, and that's the kind of modern world we live in. Really, I'm not playing DVDs. I'm using all the modern tools. But I'm trying to curate them in an efficient way.
So that's about prioritisation, isn't it? And questioning which are the ones that add value, and trying to sift through. Yeah,
and finding when you found a way to do that, your day gets a lot simpler. Your evening gets, and you can get some enjoyment. You can relax a little bit, because that what a lot of people can't deal with very often is a lot of choice.
Yeah,
that really is frustrating for many people.
Yeah. In the world of AI and technology and how rapid things are moving, what advice would you give someone about maybe developing and changing their relationship with technology and starting to see the benefits in it?
Well, first up, it was I really do believe that the time you spend on devices is a kind of issue. You know, if you can generally get a report about what you've done the previous week. If you set a bar for yourself, I think that's one good thing. But also where you use the product as well. I mean, I generally don't take my phone upstairs, for example. There's places that I wouldn't bother, having a device with me. I don't need that. So there are places where you can naturally switch off, where you don't need a constant feed of something. I was recently walking. I guess we'll get on to walking a little bit. I was recently walking in Wales. Do a lot of my walking in Wales, and I started off with a podcast. I was listening to something. Ironically, a podcast about walking. So right. and yet there I am on an actual path walking, and I realised I was kind of on my own. There was nobody about. It was a glorious day. It was fantastic. Blue sky, Welsh hillside. You could see out to sea. I was just on top end of Wales. The A55 was snaking beneath me. And I realised I was doing that, and I took I kind of have a cap with my headphones on, took this thing off, and I was just listening to Birdsong then. And the Birdsong was, it's a big chorus, and it was the only soundtrack you really needed. Really, I didn't need that feed. No. I had a pretty natural feed that I then utilised for the remainder of my walk. I was going to a specific point, I was coming back, and for the whole of it, I just loved it. It was just wonderful. That said, I'd caveat that because I'll have a little bit of honesty in you. I didn't recognise all the bird songs, so I did have to dip into an app that I use. the Merlin app that told me I was in the company of great spotted woodpecker. I was with a great bunting. I think there was a goldfinch, and I think there was a meadow pipit. I mean, I ask you, that's exotic, right? You want to know that stuff.
Yeah, so, big fan of the great spotted woodpecker.
Oh, well, I didn't spot it, I just heard it. Yeah.
A very vibrant red. That's a nice little segue onto balance, because I know you've got a pretty big goal in life in terms of your walk, and share that goal with us.
Well, it's kind of, there's almost like a constant goal with me, you're right. And it started, I guess, with a feeling that I always have to have that sort of goal that I'm walking towards. And, I wouldn't say I can walk from massive long distances, but I'm pretty resilient. I kind of go in again. And as a consequence, I kind of, a number of years ago, I decided to kind of walk Welsh Coastal Path. And I completed that, and that was a great thing. That's 870 miles worth of the whole of the coastline of Wales, right? It's pretty magnificent. I wouldn't know where to begin to describe all of it to you. Don't ask me the best bits.
Oh, I was gonna.
Don't ask me the best bits, because I think there's too much to talk about. I don't want to leave anyone out. You always have to go north-south, and don't forget Ceredigion. And then after that, because you come to the end of that, you realise, actually, I don't want this to end, that I picked up Offers Dyke. With my walking partner, we walked Offers Dyke as well. Right. And so now I've circumnavigated the whole country, which, it's 1,000 miles plus of walking, pretty lumpy in places, pretty testing in places, but fantastic as well. Yeah. And I find that I always have to have that goal. And currently I'm walking, doing this one on my own, a thing called Taith Pererin Gogledd Cymru. It's a Welsh thing.
Who's that again, Brian?
I'll give you that in English. That's the North Wales Pilgrim's Way.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And so that goes from Holywell across North Wales, zigzagging across North Wales. And as you know, it's a lumpy place, North Wales. Down the Llŷn Peninsula, to Aberdaron, and then across to Bardsey Island, finishes on Bardsey Island. So that's about 140-ish miles. And I'm just about to kind of close that off. Not doing that in a linear way, so I'm biting it off. So I got a little bit in the middle to do, but I'm hoping to complete that pretty soon. So my mind will be turning to the next thing the next goal probably for 26 or where I'm going to go then. But yeah, I like to have those goals in play at all time. Yeah.
So I was working in Holywell yesterday. There's a lot of links there between what you were speaking about and the work that I've done for the past few years, and things that popped out to me is I'm wondering why that's important for you to walk, and is there any links between that and gratitude and being grateful for the things that we've got sometimes, walking that beautiful coastline.
Yeah.
I know you were up at Mulfra the other day, a beautiful part of the world. We've been there loads with the kids. And there's something around that ability to get out, and I know your Welsh heritage is really important to you, and staying grounded and literally keeping, your feet on Welsh soil. How important is that to you?
Well, it's really important. I think, getting out there, you do really feel the benefit. Sometimes the thing that's ahead of you, you might have like a 10-mile stretch ahead of you, and it might be raining horizontally, right? It's not always sunny. Let's be honest, life's not always sunny. No. But the one thing I can truly say is whenever I've done a walk, whenever I've kind of gone out and gone through whatever weather's been thrown at you, you always come back, better. You always come back improved. You always come back with a clearer frame of mind, I think. And you're always grateful for having done it. I never come back and go, I wish I hadn't done that. I never come back and ever think that. So getting over that little bit of an obstacle, that little bit of a hurdle to get the impetus to go, I think is really important. I think because once you break through that, you can really kind of lean into it and enjoy it. Sometimes you really do have to lean into it.
Yeah, you do.
You do, literally. Yeah.
So you don't fall off.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. But I think so. Yeah, getting out there and switching off, one foot in front of the other. It's important. I think always come back better. Frankly, yeah. It's good for creativity and thinking as well. I mean, that space. If you want to work something out, going for a walk is a great way to work something out. So when I think about innovation, right, I'm not always talking about the next shiny gadget or the next thing that goes beep. But it's not all like that. Sometimes it's a process. Sometimes it's an improvement you're trying to make. So innovation in its broader sense, if you're trying to solve a problem that's a knotty problem that's been going around your mind, walking is a really good way to kind of switch off and let your brain kind of get into a space that allows you to solve that. If you're in an office or a kind of limited, if you're in limited kind of space, sometimes you haven't got that. The wide open spaces allow you to kind of think a little differently, and you are changing your brain a little bit by throwing lots of stimuli at it. The last walk I talked about just then, I had the stimuli of amazing, heather-covered mountains. I had, I had only sheep for companionship, apart from one mountain biker. And then I kind of looked out to the sea, and I had this incredible vista of wind farm in a distance, as I say, the snake in A55 beneath me. That's a lot of stimuli hitting you, and it's doing something for you. It's physically doing something for you. It's changing your kind of thinking a little bit. So you've got to kind of put yourself in those positions to tap into that, I think.
And that's an interesting metaphor when you think about their kind of those natural stimuli that's coming towards, maybe not the wind farm, but that's symbolic to life, isn't it? We have a lot of distractions, we have a lot of stimuli, a lot of time, a lot of pressures, a lot of information from various channels. So I think what I'm hearing from you is it's important to just control that stimuli sometimes, to say I'm going to put myself in a natural setting, I'm just going to give myself an hour, 2 hours, whatever that might be. Phone's going to go down, and I'm just going to try and engage with the natural sides and really connect with nature, which we hear a lot of people talking about on podcasts and whatnot, but it really does work, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the cornerstone of sort of meditation, and when we think about meditation, one of the cornerstones is the teaching about how we behave in the present, how we kind of find ourselves in the present moment, okay? And what that says essentially is, try not to be thinking about what's coming in the future. Don't be running the past over and over in your mind. Try and just live in this present. And kind of those environments kind of force you almost to do that. And I think that's the healthiest place you can get to. I think if I can kind of go back to lockdown, I was kind of feeling a bit anxious during lockdown times. I was kind of dialed up my anxiety a little bit, and that's when I got access to, I got some advice to kind of say, what you need is perhaps look at some of these meditation apps. And I looked at a few, and the one I liked it on was Headspace. And I was a little bit skeptical at first. I didn't really understand meditation, really didn't understand where that was going. And I, so I downloaded that and started using it. And I've been using it ever since. And I've kind of it's almost like a daily ritual for me now. Yeah. It's kind of in there. Not a long thing, but maybe 5-10 minutes. So, but I find it really helpful. I find it like it slows you down. The setup, even just the setup, you're stopping, you're breathing through your nose, out through your mouth. Even the setup kind of relaxes your body and gets you into a different space. So that, that process teaches you some techniques and some tools really that I think will last me a lifetime now.
Yeah. I've just thought back to Uncle Ted. What would Uncle Ted's view be on you doing 5-10 minutes meditation every day?
Well, I think he probably would have understood that because, I guess, if you walk to the end of his garden and had to think for 5 minutes, maybe that's the equivalent, isn't it? It's the kind of, I guess we're not doing anything new, perhaps in some regards, are we?
But when you said before, and I know we spoke on the call last week, the gardens, the attention to the flowers, the roses, there were a lot of things that people would have done there, which was probably mindfulness. Gardening was mindfulness. Pruning the roses.
Yeah. Can you imagine? You're working at the coalface.
Yeah.
You can't imagine such a dirty, noisy, unforgiving place, right? Cramped conditions. That's probably one of the harshest jobs you can do. You'd want to create a bit of paradise, elsewhere, wouldn't you? It's just natural to have the yin and the yang there, I think.
In terms of where we are now, what are the things that people could do more of to maybe tackle things such as developing your relationship with vulnerability, managing change with technology? What are the little key bits of advice that you would give people based on your journey?
Yeah, I guess, the one thing that I'm kind of accused of, I guess, not accused of, but one thing that people can recognize in me is, I guess, certain patterns, right? I'm a kind of guy that is ritual, routine, rhythm. And, that's the thing that people say about me, I'm not gonna get any world records, but, I like to think I'm a safe pair of hands. And to get into a healthy rhythm, I don't think it's a bad thing. To get into a healthy rhythm of something, when you switch something off of an evening, the time of that. When you've got, you've created, you've done a certain number of miles exercise or walking during the day, you can attain that. As I said earlier, that measuring something to monitor is probably that's a take home. If you can find a way of doing that, of the things that are important to you, walking is the thing for me. I did a bit of a kind of plan for myself at the start of this year. I said, these are my kind of goals I'd like to achieve. I've tried to walk about 5 miles a day for the last few years. I've got a lot of Fitbit data, and I've got I've got a lot of Fitbit data, right? 12 years worth of data on this, right? That's a lot of information, and I can go back and look at myself, and I kind of got this. Hitting 5 miles and doing 10K steps. I said to myself at the start of this year, I wonder if I can do 6 miles. So I didn't really didn't push it. I just kind of dialed it up I dialed it up. And like I said, I had a kind of Spinal Tap moment, and you'll know this. I said, I wonder if I can set my kind of alarm on my phone to say I've gone 11,000 steps rather than 10,000 steps. So that's the equivalent of Spinal Tap, right? I can go, just going up one, right? And that's what I did. I kind of turned that up. I dialed that up. And that would be my advice. If you were doing something that you know is good for you, then if you can just do a bit more of it, then you'll find that's got fantastic outcomes. I've noticed I kind of improved my sleep recently. I mean, just in this last 12 months, just by dialing up that to 6. Oh, wow. Where it was 5, it's now 6. Sleep's gone really good. Really good, yeah. So you don't have to make sweeping changes, I think, I kind of fall back on some of the gurus that we have, in this space, in wellness. Michael Mosley was brilliant, what a great guy, kind of came up with a lot of wisdom, and Dr. Rangan Chatterjee as well. And they would say the same things. They would always say, when they talk about their patients making changes and doing anything in their lives, they talk about the idea that I'm not going to ask you to walk 10 miles tomorrow. I'm going to ask you to try and walk tomorrow. Come back, try and do it like 100 yards a day. If you want to make a change, you take a small step and you just bite off a small piece. And that's the way you kind of make an everlasting and repeating change. I think that's kind of an important message. If you're going to do something and you want to kind of make an improvement, do that. So similarly, you can do that with the bad stuff, right? You can have one less biscuit, one less kind of scroll on Facebook. It's that sort of stuff. Just dial it up, dial it down, but dial it. Yeah.
That word innovation stayed with me because you speak about innovation from a tech point of view, and I think about innovation for us as men and for masculinity. Now, I've a firm view that based on where we are now in terms of mental health rates, that maybe that old stereotypes of masculinity maybe isn't fit for purpose in the modern world. How do you think we need to innovate as men to navigate the challenges of technology or whatever it might be? How do we link innovation to masculinity?
I don't know, that's a tricky one. I'll be frank with you. I'm giving it a lot of thought.
We didn't plan that, did we?
Oh no, we didn't. We didn't. But it's interesting. I think in a workplace, when I think of all the workplaces I've been, where it's been male centric and driven by kind of men who are kind of owning a kind of management structure or whatever, the kind of best places I think I've worked at, and I've worked on multiple settings now, are the ones where it's always mixed, where you've got different age groups, you've got different genders, and you've got a really good mix where you have diversity, you have strength. That's something I think is really important, and I think there's a lot of value. There's certainly a lot of value in what you bring about getting men to talk to men. I think that's really important. But I think just ensure that you bring diversity as well. Yeah. I think it's very important to kind of do that and make sure you have a healthy mix, because that's the real world, right? We're only 50% of the story here, aren't we?
Yeah. And we can learn so much from everyone, can't we? That's the beauty. Yeah. Difference is the beauty.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're kind of getting towards the back end, and we like to ask all our guests for their little blackbird worm of wisdom. So come on, Bri.
Well, I mean, we've kind of come across it already. If I was going to leave it in 4 words, I'd leave it with this: that you need to be your own algorithm. Be your own algorithm. And I think what I mean by that is we are fed, the streams of stuff to buy on Amazon. We are fed a feed on Facebook and Insta, and we're fed stuff that frankly holds our attention. And the real value is when you control that yourself. And the way you control it, if I can just kind of give you an example of how we can control it. It's not just by switching things off. It's just by doing things a bit differently and understanding where we get a little bit of random from, because random is what we need as humans every now and again. Just about the start of lockdown, a group of friends got together and we said we're going to read, we're going to do a little book club. This is before we locked down. It's quite appropriate, really. We fell into that. And we said we're going to pick a different book every few months. But we ended up doing about four for you. And we're going to pick noir. It's going to be a noir thriller theme, right? So that's the theme. It's kind of maybe whodunit, noir thriller. That's the kind of genre. But we're going to pick a different country every time. So we've done that. We've kind of gone round. And it's easy to start with, right? You kind of go and you imagine what happens to you. You go in English-speaking countries to start with, predominantly, and then branching out into Europe, because lots of European stuff is translated. We're up to book 23, 24 now, because we've done this, and we've done Australia and New Zealand, and we've done kind of South Africa, and we've touched on loads of countries across Europe, and it's getting interesting. But it can't be fed by an algorithm easily. We've got to go out there and curate what's coming next. And I think that's really important. You know, we are our algorithm. We are our feed in this. You can't, you know, if you're expecting Amazon to give you the next thing, they won't realize that you need now to go to Poland. You know, they won't understand where you need to go, and we need to kind of find these other countries. And so we are in control of that. So when you're in control of your algorithm, you can almost set the agenda, and then you don't waste time, you know, getting fed stuff that you don't need or don't want, you know. And I think that's true. And I just one other to add to that. Same group of friends, what we did a few years back as well was we said at Christmas time we won't gift each other a huge pile of stuff. Let's just gift each other some stuff and kind of put a limit on it. And why don't we gift each other some pre-loved stuff, right? Or some things we made ourselves. And we kind of really went back to basics and started kind of doing that. And I was trying to do a few drawings and do a few paintings, and then going into charity shops and looking for stuff. But do you know the beauty of that sort of activity was that is truly random. If you walk into a charity shop and you think you're in an algorithm, you're the polar opposite. You know, you're looking for something that is not often kind of in alphabetical order, and it's wonderful. It's I kind of really enjoyed that the last few years, and it made me think about how we're fed things and how we curate ourselves. So that's the take home really. Be your own algorithm if you can find ways to do that.
I like that, and that's about growth, right? That's about being in charge of your own personal growth. Yeah. Search for the areas, the interests, the things that light you up, and go for that, and be the master of your own destiny. So that connecting that with your growth mindset. Yeah,
absolutely.
Brilliant, Bryan. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for your time and thanks for your insights. It's been brilliant. It's great to chat again.
It's been a pleasure for me too, Aid.
When you talk, just before we go, when you were talking about ritual there, remember that time you liked that chair, didn't you, in the office? But when someone came into that office and took that chair one day...
Was that you? Was that you?
It wasn't me. But he never got back. Well, Bryan, it's been class. Thanks for your time.
Okay.
All the best.
Thanks for listening, or thanks for watching the podcast. Please take a couple of seconds to engage with us. Please subscribe, like, or give us a comment on how you're finding the podcast so far. And keep listening. Take care. All the best. Keep smiling.